A palace coup in the Kremlin. FSB's toppling Putin. Patrushev is successor. Insider Dmitry Gordon, Tokayev's KGB. When was Kazakhstan's leader recruited? Crimea road breached. Ukraine forces surge in Moscow air defense's top high-rises. This is the Project Vova burn. Let's go.
How's our sewing campaign going?
Palaj, thank you very much.
Wait, I don't get it. Who is Palaik? The nasty little Putin, also known as Vladimir Vladimirovich,
Well, he's an idiot. Let's just start calling things by their real names. A complete moron?
That's true. But then who does Patrushev's son call Palaich? What do you think? Write your thoughts in the comments.
Option 1, it's some guy named Pasha, son of Lai. Because if it's Pavel and Lai, then his dad is Lai and he's Pasha. Pavel. And, maybe it's actually some kind of Putin body double.
In fact, this much talked about story where right in the Kremlin, the son of the former chief FSB officer Nikolai Patrushev, Dmitry, calls Putin by some unclear patronymic or nickname is actually much more complicated and multifaceted than it seems at first glance. It's not just a simple slip of the tongue or a case of poor diction. I recently had a long conversation with the journalist Dmitry Gordon, and he told me many interesting things.
It is alarming that the Kremlin media presented it in this form. Like, that is, there are several options. Either they screwed up, I don't believe in this option, or they are deliberately sinking Putin, and it is the FSB that is sinking Putin. I am absolutely sure of this.
Yes, so we'll talk about how the FSB is undermining Putin in just a minute. But personally, I immediately recall those statements by Professor Solovey. Supposedly, the real Putin has been in the fridge for about a year and a half now, so to speak, taking a rest. Maybe that's why in the Kremlin they're welcoming some completely random individual, some Palaik. Huh?
He died, absolutely, for sure. He passed away in the evening around 20 minutes to 9 on Thursday, October 26th. Irrevocably, definitely. Right now, he is in the cold storage chamber of his residence in Valdai. Humiliating, isn't it? But probably deserved.
I don't know about humiliating, but definitely deserved. Only confirmations of Putin's death have not yet been received. But one thing is absolutely clear. The FSB agents are definitely preparing to physically eliminate this bunker dweller.
All coups and political assassinations in the Soviet Union and in Russia were carried out under the direction of the FSB. Personally by the FSB.
That's true, but in Soviet times, coups and liquidations were handled by the KGB. Well, for example, Stalin was poisoned and Beria was behind it, which means the security services were involved. Who removed Khrushchev and put Brezhnev in power? Well, it was the same KGB, the same signature style. It's always been like this, both under the Soviets and in Putin's Russia. Well, it's really all the same thing.
So, at the head of everything, it's always the security service. So that no one has any illusions whatsoever.
Well, let's get back to their to Putin. So, the author of the meme about Palaish is named Dmitry Patrushev. And he's not as simple as he seems at first glance. For quite some time, he has already long been widely regarded as the person who will replace Vladimir Putin in the Kremlin.
This is Dmitry Patrushev, first deputy prime minister, son of the former head of the FSB, and a possible successor to Vladimir Putin.
Yes, and you heard the main thing. Demulia's father is none other than Nikolai Patrushev, Russia's former top FSB officer.
Ever since the year 2014, approximately 17,000 innocent civilians have been killed in Ukraine by the actions of the authorities in Kyiv, including around 400 children, and more than 32,000 additional people have been left with various injuries.
Well, yes, Patrushev Sr. is also not adequate. He is an enemy of Ukraine, a KGB man, but at the same time, he is someone who has personally known Putin for a very long time and knows all his sins, so to speak. He was there with Putin at the very beginning.
Lieutenant Colonel Putin has left his post.
Colonel General, post accepted.
And this Nikolai Patrushev has held a long-standing grudge against Putin. The fact is, until May 12, 2024, for 16 years, he was the Secretary of the Security Council of the Russian Federation. But then Putin realizes that Patrushev is becoming increasingly dangerous, becoming far too willful, and sends him into retirement, making him nothing more than his assistant.
There is a hypothesis. Putin is just a front, and the real strategy is shaped by Patrushev.
So what now? And remember, there's no such thing as a former FSB agent. And the old Patrushev wants revenge, wants to remove Putin from the Kremlin as early as 2026 and put his own son Dima in his place. You know, the one they call Palike?
Could he, Patrushev, actually work against Putin?
Well, he's always working against Putin. Always.
And now I think the puzzle of what's happening has finally come together for you. And this dismissive Palike from the younger Patrushev is a direct continuation of the ongoing public discrediting of Putin by the FSB.
It was exactly the same with Yeltsin. In other words, the handwriting is the same, the style is the same. Nothing new.
They're shaming him basically in public, in front of cameras, on Telegram channels, online, offline, in the Kremlin. People are fed up with Putin, even his so-called own people now.
I am beginning to understand, or rather I see that openly mocking Putin is starting to take hold across Russia.
Yeah.
And in Russia, a staggering number of publications and interviews have started to appear, with his devoted lackeys who now openly say that Putin is a puppet, that Putin is, well, a literal devil, and that Putin is a thief and a notorious international war criminal. He's being openly insulted now by Z-war correspondents, Z-bloggers and propagandists. Who isn't doing it at this point?
Yeah, all these bloggers who have switched sides, like Remeslo, who used to be obsessed with Putin and now insult him, Shoigu, who also wants to carry Putin out of the Kremlin feet first, and other Z-war correspondents criticizing the despicable little Putin. None of this is happening by accident. It's all being orchestrated by the Russian security services. Let's listen to Dmitry Gordon again.
In a country crushed by fear, people suddenly start insulting Putin. What does that tell us? It tells us that, of course, this process is being directed by the FSB. And of course, this constant mockery, this deliberate clowning, calling him a devil and a criminal, it's all not simply happening by chance at all.
But now let's ask this. What exactly do the FSB agents want? What ultimately awaits Vladimir Putin? It's possible that even before the end of this year, he'll be carried out of the Kremlin, maybe even feet first.
The FSB fully recognizes the fact that Russia has reached a dangerous turning point. And today, in order to prevent the entire state from collapsing, they need to sacrifice Putin. They are prepared to take this step.
The FSB is ready for this, especially since discrediting Putin is not difficult. He's a walking disgrace himself. Rubber butt. A rubber butt is just the start. You remember Putin dreamed and still dreams of living to 150 years old.
Perhaps in theory, you could actually make it to 150. But first of all, it will never be enough.
But for Putin to live to 150 is, to put it mildly, highly unlikely. But becoming related to pigs, that's a much more realistic prospect. Putin will have a surprising thing in common with a pig. That's not intended as an insult, it's a genuine medical reality. Honestly, I don't even know how to joke about this anymore. I just feel sorry for the animals. I mean, those very pigs. Alright, let's listen to the rest of this mess. The Wall Street Journal has recently reported that Russia is currently developing life extension technologies. And one of the primary objectives of this program is to cultivate spare human organs inside genetically modified pigs. 73-year-old Vladimir Putin has shown particular interest in these projects. He has repeatedly spoken publicly about the possibilities of life extension and even immortality. How long do you honestly think Putin would have to live to see the capture of Mala Tokmachka? Alright guys, this is just some hardcore nonsense, but I still want to dig a little deeper into the topic. Here are some interesting details that have come up about these piglets. It sounds like a joke, but according to the Wall Street Journal, this very project is part of a Russian government program worth $26 billion focused on life extension technologies. The project involves organizations connected to Putin's daughter, Maria Vorontsova, and the head of the Kurchatov Institute, Mikhail Komalchuk. And that's incredible. 1 million Russians have already brought the entire Russian economy to its knees in Ukraine. And yet he gives $26 billion to his own daughter, so she can utilize biological experiments with pigs to help him live to 150. I must give him my respects for that. Putin's Russia really is the land of Mordor.
Whoever calls names, that's what they are themselves.
You know what's funny? Putin is being humiliated and shamed on camera at the FSB's command, not only in Russia itself, but also, for example, in Kazakhstan. That same Putin recently met with Tokayev. And just look at what came out of it. They don't even put Putin in the center anymore so as not to ruin the family photo. Well, I mean the photo after the meeting in Kazakhstan. And it makes sense because Putin's place isn't in the center of the photo but on the defendant's bench. By the way, Putin's visit to Kazakhstan showed just how much this war criminal is now, in 2026, intimidated and terrified. Look, In Putin's motorcade in Astana, they spotted an armored vehicle with a spot for a machine gunner, as well as an electronic warfare vehicle and a cover helicopter. Just in case, you never know, some unknown object might suddenly decide to take an interest in geopolitics. Yes, and there's another very telling moment from Kazakhstan, much subtler than it seems at first glance. In Astana, once again, Putin couldn't pronounce President Tokayev's first name and patronymic properly. Let me remind you, his name is Kassym-Jomart Kemelovich, but Putin calls him like this.
President Kassym-Jomart Kemelovich Tokayev has already made a specific mention of this point.
And friends, what's important is this isn't just more Putin stupidity, it's once again a discrediting of the bunker dweller by the Russian security services. Let's listen to the Telegram channel Kremlin Snuffbox. Putin didn't just fail to pronounce the Kazakh president's name for no reason. The Kremlin claims that this is connected to an assassination threat. Our president mispronounced the president of Kazakhstan's name and couldn't say his first name and patronymic correctly. Everyone knew that Vladimir Vladimirovich wouldn't remember this first name and patronymic. So someone slipped him a note where Tokayev's first name and patronymic were not only written illegibly but also incorrectly. They were written in at the last moment by someone. Now we're trying to figure out who. It turns out that internal enemies have gotten very close to Vladimir Vladimirovich, said the channel's source. But wait, you might ask, what does this have to do with an assassination threat? Here's how. Even Putin's inner circle is leaking this information now. They're openly saying that an attempt on Putin's life is about to happen. He is convinced that these enemies are now launching a fierce information attack on Putin. First, they portray him in an unflattering light, saying he can't even pronounce the name and patronymic of the president of a friendly country. Then they'll fake an assassination and claim they had no choice. How can he command the special military operation if he can't even say a full name? Under the cover of all this, they'll end the special military operation too. A devious plan, explained the president's associate.
We are all mortal beings, and we are all living under the watchful eye of God.
And one day we will all leave this world. That is inevitable.
And to wrap up the topic of Kazakhstan, what struck me most in this situation was President Tokayev. It feels like Tokayev is taking part in some kind of competition for giving compliments to Putin, and we just don't know about it. Otherwise, it's hard to explain why Tokayev is groveling so much before that nasty Putyomka.
As an exceptionally distinguished and outstanding statesman and a politician of global stature, you have steadfastly and consistently pursued policies aimed at strengthening Russia's status as a great power. Without Russia's direct involvement, absolutely not one single major and significant international issue can or will be effectively or properly resolved.
And here, friends, it's important to distinguish the wonderful Kazakh people, who for the most part hate the Russian world and President Tokayev's position. What motivates him? Why does he kiss Putin's behind so often? Dmitry Gordon makes it clear, Tokayev's KGB background hasn't gone anywhere.
Back in the year 1970, he entered MGIMO, where he was sent for a 6-month pre-graduation internship at the Embassy of the Soviet Union in the People's Republic of China. Listen, this is a direct appointee of the Soviet KGB. In other words, this person has been working for the KGB since his youth. In 1991, before the Soviet Union had even collapsed, he entered the Diplomatic Academy of the USSR Ministry of Foreign Affairs for advanced training courses for senior diplomatic staff. Well, what more do we need? What else do we need to know about Comrade Tokayev? Of course, he comes from there. Of course, he is a KGB appointee. Of course, Putin speaks exactly the same language as him.
By the way, how does the bunker moth speak these days? We haven't heard from him in quite a while.
My sincerest apologies to the ladies. Everyone, sit tight and don't make a peep. It will be exactly as we say.
Does Putin really think that in 2026 someone will still be afraid of him? No, no one is afraid anymore. Just look at what is happening in Moscow. Moscow's cyberpunk vibe is real. In this video, a helicopter delivers an air defense system directly onto a glass skyscraper's roof. For the Kremlin, that's very close, and Ukrainian drones, as always, are nearby. I'm really left wondering what the Kremlin is so nervously preparing for. And Moscow is probably preparing for the same thing as temporarily occupied Crimea. The Ukrainian Armed Forces are bringing the peninsula back home. The Russians' land corridor to Crimea is under the fire control of the Ukrainian army. Moscow is losing Crimea. The Ukrainian Armed Forces are destroying logistics and strangling the peninsula. Ukraine continues to strike at the aggressor's oil facilities in occupied Feodosia. After 2 direct missile strikes, intense fires immediately broke out. A massive towering plume of smoke stretched for almost 10 kilometers toward the Black Sea. Z channels are already scaring Russians even more than the defense forces. And this is how they address tourists who are going to vacation on the occupied peninsula.
I would imagine you've never felt primal fear and you're thinking, yeah, what is he even talking about? Well, welcome.
And now here's a vivid illustration of what the Russian world leads to. A real-life illustration, so to speak.
Soon we'll be riding bicycles. Gasoline is completely gone. Damn, what doesn't she give? In short, that's it. We're switching over. We're switching from what I understand, and we are definitely switching over to using bicycles.
Yes, there's no gasoline left in Crimea anymore. Well, what did you expect? Oil depots, fuel trucks, they don't just catch fire for no reason. Glory to the armed forces of Ukraine.
Do you see? That is all that it takes for a healthy lifestyle, simply onto bicycles. There is absolutely no fuel required at all.
Yes, there's no fuel in Crimea and there won't be any more. It's really like going back to the USSR. Listen, here's some fresh information. Starting May 31st, gasoline in Crimea will be distributed by coupons supplied by Russia. The head of annexed Crimea, Sergei Aksyonov, announced that starting May 31st, a 95 gasoline will be distributed as a priority to municipal and social transport, as well as by coupons, with no volume restrictions. Yeah, no restrictions. I wonder, does anyone still believe that? I'm sure they don't.
He went. He's coming. Here. How do you like this poster, huh? Andrei Nikolaevich, you could hang it right here. It would look sharp, right?
And look, the fact that the Ukrainian armed forces are liberating the Crimean Peninsula, everyone has understood that for a long time now. But the fact that Ukrainian drones and missiles can now liberate the Yamal Peninsula from Russia, which is in northern Siberia, that's something new.
Since the invasion began, an air raid alert was hit on Russia's Yamal Peninsula. Just so you understand? Just so you understand the total distance, right? Where this is located.
And this Yamal Peninsula is located more than 2,500 kilometers from Ukraine. There are simply no safe places left in Russia anymore. Let me just remind you that this very Yamal is one of Russia's main regions for gas and oil extraction. And now that's the kind of excitement happening there. For the first time, a missile threat has reached Yamal. Residents received SMS alerts from the Ministry of Emergency Situations. The alert regime also covers Sverdlovsk, Chelyabinsk, Kurgan, Tyumen, and Perm Krai. The airports in Yekaterinburg, Chelyabinsk, and Perm are closed, and flights are being delayed in Tyumen. The geography of denazification is expanding successfully, that's for sure. Now, let's listen to military political expert Alexander Musienko. What will be the main target of the Ukrainian armed forces in Yamal itself? This is a very important topic.
And right there, my friends, is the famous so-called impressive Yamal Cross. It's essentially the interception point for all the most important gas transportation, these extensive gas distribution networks and infrastructure coming from Western Siberia, that is from the sites of direct extraction and then before transportation. They branch out to various diverse regions across the vast territory of Russia with the primary aim, first of all, of supplying gas to local enterprises, heavy industry, and individual residential consumers, that is for heating and meeting essential household gas needs and so on. It's a truly vast area, and in fact, this critical gas distribution hub, if you look at aerial photographs, strikingly resembles the shape of a giant cross. That's exactly why it's called the Yamal Cross. That's the specific name people have given it.
Friends, you understand, when Ukrainian missiles hit this very Yamal Cross, it will put an end, quite symbolically, to this oil and gas pseudo-empire.
Just take a moment to imagine the scale of this. This could trigger the most massive and truly colossal collapse for the entire, let me emphasize, the entire gas transportation system across all of Russia. Honestly, we are steadily getting closer to that point, so it is high time for the Russians to start thinking seriously about it.
Yeah, Russians really need to think, are they going to keep supporting Putin just to end up without gas, without electricity? Or will they finally come to their senses? I'm really curious to see what those staunch imperialists will say now. Well, that's all for today. Subscribe to the Union YouTube channel. Take care.